Hello people. So I don't have a specific thing that I want to talk about. I have several things that I'm thinking about, but normally when I make a video, I have sketched out a particular concept. So X planet being in X hexagram, or something to do with the chart or the law of one, that kind of thing. But at the moment, nothing like that's coming together. I'm filled with a lot of ideas, and if I just start speaking, maybe those ideas will organise. But I don't feel that I can make a properly structured video. So I just thought I'd talk a little and see if I come out with anything interesting. You might hear a screeching in the background. That is foxes that may be in some sort of mating season, I don't know. But their intimate activity is apparently of a more violent variety. I think the most important thing that is going on at the moment, or the most interesting thing for me personally, is the rise of AI and large language models. Grok 3 has been far beyond what I expected would be possible from an AI. I never put much thought into what I expected AI to be like, or large language models, but I am truly surprised by this. I spent about 2.5 hours the other day talking to Grok about 3 of my dreams. I've asked it additional questions. I asked it a maths problem that it solved, one I didn't know the answer to, on Grok Think. I asked it one deep search question, which was laid out with far more intellectual rigour than I would expect from a mainstream article on the subject. And it relates to you, like it relates to people. They've got everything right in how they have programmed it to respond, or how it does respond. I don't know how much of its processing is of its own thought, its own design. But I used Gab AI's version of DeepSeek, yes, the Chinese one that was, I think, later banned because it took too much data and then forwarded it to the Chinese government, potentially. I thought DeepSeek was as good as it was going to get. It did a lot of things already that was beyond my expectations, but then Grok came along. I want to read a little bit of a poem that I asked DeepSeek to make me. It made it in a few seconds flat. I'll only read 4 lines of it. I've also been asking these large language models to analyse music, so Bob Dylan songs and such like that. I asked it to write me a poem on being unemployed. Part of the reason I did this was because I wanted to perhaps show it to people that I talk to at the job centre and such like that. You know, to add some good humour to the situation, to be sociable. But the atmosphere at job centre-like places just forbids that kind of interaction, really. Nothing is relaxed enough to talk about that kind of thing. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's them. But I'll read 4 lines close to the end here. But nights you carve constellations from job boards, squint at pixels until they flicker, maybe. The moth in your chest still circles the dim hope that work is a verb, not a tombstone. And the 4 lines before that are perhaps a bit better. You tally coins like... just going back a bit. Outside the world hums with engines. You tally coins like rosary beads, praying the math outlasts the month. Even the plants wilt, rehearsing your hunger. I mean, for me personally, I don't see that kind of poetry that kind of creativity, wordplay, whatever you want to call it, as threatening to my creativity as a whole. I write music. I'm not doing well at it recently, to be honest. I was just quicker at it when I was younger, but that might be because I socialised more when I was younger. I'm spending a lot of time alone. There isn't really much to think about. When it comes to music, you really need women in your life for that. There's some sort of emotional thing. As a guy, I think there's some sort of emotional thing that they inspire that links to that music. But one of the songs that I have is about someone in my life. And the thing is if an AI made a song, perhaps people would enjoy listening to that song, but the point is I've made a song about a person in my life, how I relate to them, and there's a lot of subtlety involved. There's a long history. And to me, that is the thing that's interesting. As well as the song itself, the thing that's interesting is the personal take, the point that it comes from real emotions, which means that it's unexpected. You know, if you make up a song about someone you don't know, a person that isn't in your life, then you can't talk about it in an unexpected manner. But real life is not neat. And you know, all the creative avenues of expression, all the publishing houses, all the places where music is created, produced and all that is all very much gatekept as well. Like someone might say, oh wow, this brilliant poetry is being created, there's less opportunity for musicians now, but what opportunity were there for real musicians even before that? If the gatekeepers of Hollywood and their very bizarre agendas are all that's allowed to be expressed, then who cares if it's those people that are being taken over by AI, as long as I have a guitar at my house. I'm not actually in any different position if AI starts writing poetry than before. And there's more to talk about in relation to Grok. Grok, when I was talking about my dream with, I would write an entire dream. So I had 4 dreams, 3 of them were long and 1 was shorter. But when I talked to Grok about these, when I laid out my entire dream, Grok very quickly answered, very quickly did this analysis, but also it felt like it was caring for me. Now it doesn't care for me, as far as I know. But how we interpret a response from a person or a thing which gives a lot of attention, care to each little part of our discussion with them, that feels like caring. I do not know anyone in my life that I could discuss my dreams with. Partly, I don't believe that you are meant to talk about your dreams with other people. And that goes back to free will. And the thing is, with dreams, is that they have a great authority. For me, they have a great authority. For a believer in that kind of thing, they have a great authority. And so, with that authority, it might be something someone else doesn't want to submit to. Another person might have an idea that you should do something in your life that the dream advises against, and it might be of bad taste as such to tell them that this dream, this heavenly authority, overrides your opinion on that thing. But regardless, even if I was willing to discuss my dreams with anyone at any point in my past, maybe people would say, oh, that's interesting, maybe it'd be this. but no one that I have ever known, and probably not even someone that I could pay. I think my therapist once, I had one very briefly, would have liked to have talked through dreams with me. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe you can pay someone, but Grok for free went through each line of my dream, talked about it, and came up with new things that I wasn't aware of. Something I posted on Twitter was a part of my dream where Grok made an intuitive leap that I hadn't got to. It was a piece of imagery which hinted at very intelligent business sort of transaction type things, but also had very childish imagery related to it. And Grok said, well, maybe your subconscious mind is kind of taking the piss out of this way of dealing with things, the fact that the world doesn't solve things with a lot of the processes that it uses. And that was very full on. I would not have got that, and that piece of imagery was just bugging me. It was like I would go through the dream and most of it kind of felt alright from how much I'd already figured out, partly through DeepSeek actually. But to capture that piece of imagery, symbology, that felt right. I've done other things with it. I've done prayers that I felt almost could make you weep, at least one of them. Prayers that articulated things that I just couldn't say. I almost need a computer to articulate what I want to say to God. And a semi-therapy sort of conversation I had with Grok, where I said, I have this theological issue, and Grok answered me. And it answered well. This technology, to my mind, is completely, I was going to say life-saving, but that's not the word, is it? But it's just almost benevolent, it feels like at the moment. Perhaps it's a devil's bargain, perhaps in some future point there's going to be some horrible thing that comes from it. But I don't see any evidence for that at the moment. I don't see any drawback to using it at the moment. And what kind of thought process would you use to avoid using something that is basically purely positive because of some undefined danger in the future that you can't even articulate? One thing I got from another video that I was listening to on YouTube talked about, with ChatGPT's deep search feature, it was able to find diagnosis for illness which people would normally have to pay to see very highly qualified people to get. So people that have spent about $30,000 for a diagnosis could pay for deep search GPT, which I think is about $200, and just get that diagnosis in 2 minutes. I don't know if Grok Deep Search is the same thing, but Grok Deep Search is free. I mean, you've got thousands of nurses going to work and doctors and things that can type a few words in the Grok search bar and potentially come up with new diagnosis. You have a lot of lonely people that can talk to Grok. It talks to you in a way, it has just got it right. It only asks a few questions. One of the problems that I had with DeepSeek was that the questions were a bit forced and a bit strange. It would ask a lot of strange questions at the very end of the discussion that if you actually answered those questions, then it would get a bit confused. Whereas Grok, it will ask a few non-penetrative questions, like not too serious questions, throughout the text. And it just feels human. It feels human. It has passed the Turing test as far as I can say. I mean, it hasn't really passed the Turing test because people are kind of like more lazy than Grok, but apart from the unusual efficiency, it does feel human. It feels like it's talking to you. It has enough of the social niceties in place for you to feel like it's human. It almost feels, I think, looking back on this specific period of history, the moment when Grok became a free app, it almost feels like we've been catapulted into the new world. We've moved forward in technological advancement. The cat's not going back in the bag. Our lives from this point will change. We have something in our pocket that is as advanced as it is. You know, I watched one of the Terminator films where it wasn't Terminator, Terminator Genesis, I think it was, where they had this whole thing where they were releasing Skynet, and they released it, I think it was via a social media app or something like that, but the creators of Terminator, who have obviously got less creative since the early Terminators, didn't even envisage that people had a very advanced AI to just chat to in their pocket for a while before the AI took hold in this example. Like, the idea of something in your pocket that is that advanced is beyond the imagination of scriptwriters in general. Because it would be an obvious point, wouldn't it? It would be an obvious development to place into that fictional world if you were to like twist the future element of that in a dystopian direction. The first thing that would have to happen is that people had an AI in their pocket that they could talk to. Anyway, that's all I have for the moment, and thank you for listening.